In an African village called Dombasi, surrounded by tall grasslands and the echo of distant drums, life was simple, spiritual, and full of quiet joys. The people of Dombasi believed that love, respect, and tradition were the heartbeat of a good life. The air often carried the scent of wood smoke and roasted maize, and the evenings were filled with laughter, stories, and dance under the stars. At the center of this peaceful village lived Nkosana and his wife Amale, a couple everyone looked up to. They seemed like a perfect match, humble, loving, and blessed by the ancestors. Their home stood just a few steps from the village's central fire pit, where elders gathered each night to share tales and offer blessings. Amale, graceful and soft-spoken, woke early every morning to sweep the compound, prepare warm tea, and tend to their small garden. Nkosana, tall and respected, was often seen helping neighbors or speaking to the elders with deep reverence. To the people of Dombasi, they were the very picture of harmony, a couple rooted in love and mutual respect. But what the village couldn't see was what happened behind their closed door. Beneath the surface of smiles and morning greetings, something unspoken had begun to grow, a silence, a secret, and soon a betrayal that would shake Dombasi to its roots. At first, Nkosana thought the feeling would pass. He told himself it was just a phase, just a restless whisper in his chest. Amale had done nothing wrong. She was the same sweet woman he married, always ready with a warm smile and kind words. She prepared his meals with care, folded his clothes neatly, and spoke gently even when he came home late or quiet. But for Nkosana, her goodness had started to feel like a weight. Her silence, once peaceful, now annoyed him. Her routine, once comforting, now felt like a cage. He began to look at her with unfamiliar eyes, eyes that no longer saw beauty in the small things she did. She laughed too softly, moved too slowly, spoke too simply. Where once he admired her kindness, now he called it weakness in his mind. And soon, those thoughts created space for someone else to slip in. Zenzile. She sold spices and scarves at the edge of Dombasi's market. Her voice was low and teasing, her movements confident and sharp like the edge of a knife. When she laughed, she made it sound like a secret only the two of them shared. Unlike Amale, Zenzile was bold. She wore bright colors, walked like she owned the land beneath her feet, and never looked down. Nkosana found himself drawn to her more with each passing day. He started buying things he didn't need, just to visit her stall. A handful of pepper, a cloth he'd never use, any excuse to see her, to hear her say his name in that slow, tempting way. It wasn't long before their glances turned into whispers, and whispers turned into touches. Zenzile didn't ask about Amale. She didn't care, and that only made her more dangerous. To Nkosana, she represented something new, something thrilling. Amale, for all her love, began to feel like yesterday's song, too soft, too slow, too predictable. And Zenzile, she was fire, wild and reckless. But with every moment he spent thinking of Zenzile, he grew colder at home. He stopped asking Amale about her day. He no longer helped in the yard or touched her hand when they sat together. She noticed, of course, but said nothing. Instead, she tried harder, cooked his favorite meals, sang his favorite songs, but nothing she did could reach him now. He was already far away, his heart wandering through thoughts he never spoke out loud. Late at night, when Amale slept with trust in her breath, Nkosana lay awake, staring at the roof. His mind was full of Zenzile, her laugh, her eyes, the way she made him feel like a man without limits. He began to think dangerous thoughts. What if Amale was no longer in the way? What if he could be free? What if he could start over? And once that thought rooted itself in his mind, it refused to leave. He started avoiding Amale during the day. He made excuses to visit the market, to stay out longer, and the more Zenzile encouraged his fantasies, the darker his heart became. He convinced himself that Amale wouldn't suffer much, that maybe it was better this way, that she'd just fade quietly and no one would question it. She was already looking weaker. He told himself it was fate, but deep down, he knew it was the seed of his own guilt taking shape. In the quiet of their home, as Amale still smiled and waited for his love to return, Nkosana was already gone. His soul had crossed a line, and soon his hands would follow. One hot afternoon, With the sun hanging low and casting long shadows over Dombassi, Nkosana made his way to the edge of the village. The path he took was quiet, winding through tall grass and dry soil until he reached a small, crooked hut covered in vines and prayer beads. This was the home of Gogo Lindiwe, the oldest and most respected herbalist in the region. Her name was known even beyond Dombassi. People came from faraway places just to seek her medicine, her blessings, and her warnings. Nkosana stepped inside, keeping his face calm, pretending his visit was innocent. The air was thick with the scent of dried roots, ashes, and crushed flowers. Gogo Lindiwe sat near a wooden table, her fingers busy grinding herbs in a stone bowl. Her eyes, pale but sharp, lifted to meet his as if she already knew his thoughts. Still, he spoke with a smile, hiding the darkness inside him. "I've been having trouble with rats," he said smoothly. "They sneak into my food at night. I need something strong, something that finishes them in one bite." Gogo Lindiwe didn't answer right away. She simply stared, her wrinkled face still, her hands pausing in motion. She studied him in silence, the room holding its breath. Then, slowly, she rose and walked to the back of the hut, pulling out a tiny clay jar sealed with a cloth and tied with string. "This," she said, holding the jar like it weighed more than it should, "is not a game. It kills without mercy. One pinch is enough for a grown man, even less for something smaller. You must be careful with it, Nkosana. The spirits watch what we do with the earth's gifts." He nodded quickly, taking the jar without looking at her. But before he could turn to leave, she spoke again. This time, her voice lower, deeper, as if something ancient was speaking through her. "Whatever you think you're hiding, it will come to light. This medicine does not just kill rats. It carries the weight of every hand that misuses it. Be sure, Nkosana, when you choose this path, there is no turning back." For a moment, Nkosana hesitated. Her words clung to the air like smoke. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. But he forced a smile and tucked the jar into the folds of his robe. "I understand," he lied. "It's just for the rats." She didn't reply. Her eyes followed him as he stepped outside and disappeared into the tall grass once more. As he walked back toward the village, the weight of the jar seemed to grow heavier with each step. But in his mind, all he could think about was Zenzile, her face, her voice, her promise. He imagined life without Amal, quiet, free, and full of passion. He told himself it was the only way. That night he hid the jar beneath his sleeping mat, glancing at Amale as she slept beside him. She looked peaceful, her hands folded near her chest like a child. For a second, something tightened in his throat. But then he thought of Zenzile's laugh, the way she touched his arm, the fire in her eyes. And just like that, the hesitation melted away. In the mornings that followed, Nkosana began preparing Amali's tea. He would rise before her, pretending to be caring, a husband trying to show love. But behind his calm hand was a heart full of lies. He added just a pinch, barely visible but enough. Each time she drank, he watched her closely, pretending to smile, pretending to love. He remembered Gogo Lindiwe's words, but he buried them deep. He told himself it was too late to stop. He convinced himself he was doing what needed to be done, that this was fate. But the truth was simpler, colder. This was a choice, a deadly one, and he had already made it. The next morning, as the rooster crowed and the village of Dombassi slowly woke, Nkosana was already up. He moved quietly through the house, careful not to wake Amale. The small clay jar from Gogo Lindiwe sat in his hand, its string now loosened. He opened it and stared at the greyish powder inside, so fine, so innocent looking. His fingers trembled just for a second before he took a small pinch, the exact amount she had warned about. He dropped it into the steaming water and stirred slowly, watching the powder disappear like it had never existed. When Amale woke and saw him holding a cup of tea, her face lit up. She smiled the way she always did when he surprised her with kindness. "You made this?" she asked softly, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Yes," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You work so hard. You deserve to be cared for too." She took the cup in both hands, grateful. She didn't question it. Why would she? He was her husband, her protector, her love. She blew gently on the tea, then sipped slowly, letting the warmth flow through her. Her eyes met his, full of trust. He nodded, pretending everything was fine. Inside, his heart beat fast, but his face remained calm. Days passed. The morning stayed the same. He made the tea. She drank it, smiling as if it meant something deep, and slowly, the change began. Amale started sleeping longer. Her body seemed tired even after rest. She moved slower when she swept the yard. Her steps weren't as steady, and Kosana watched it all. At first, he felt something like guilt tap at his chest, but it didn't last long. The more she weakened, the more distant he became. He stopped holding her at night. He no longer laughed at her jokes. He became colder, sharper, and still, every morning, he made the tea. Amale didn't complain. She never asked what was wrong. Instead, she blamed herself. She thought she was just tired from working too much, or maybe catching a cold. She continued her chores, trying to be strong, and each time she grew a little weaker, Nkosana watched from the shadows of their home, hiding his satisfaction behind quiet nods and silent stares. One morning, as she sat on the wooden stool outside, she dropped a bowl she had been holding. It slipped from her fingers and shattered. She gasped, her hands trembling. Nkosana rushed over, not out of care, but to see how far the poison had taken its hold. She looked up at him, her eyes wide and confused. "I don't know what's happening to me," she whispered. "I feel off, weak." He knelt beside her and touched her shoulder gently. "It's just the weather," he said. "You need rest. I'll make your tea." She smiled again, thankful for his care, never once guessing the truth behind his words. Each day, the signs became clearer. She no longer sang while she worked. Her skin lost its glow. Her energy faded like the last light of dusk. Yet through it all, she kept loving him. She kept thanking him for his help, for being by her side. And Nkosana? He became quieter, more distant, but colder inside. The fear of being caught had faded. In its place was something darker, an emptiness that grew as she shrank before his eyes. He told himself he was close to freedom, that soon Zenzal would be his, and the old life would be gone forever. But even as he watched Amale suffer, a strange silence followed him wherever he went. Her kindness, even in her sickness, haunted him in small ways. Her smile lingered longer than it should have. Her gratitude echoed louder than any praise he'd ever heard. Still, he kept going. Each morning, like clockwork, he made her tea with a steady hand and a colder heart, and Amale, gentle and trusting, drank it without question, never knowing that love had turned into betrayal, and that the man she shared her bed with was the very one stealing her life, one sip at a time. Zenziel's words were like fire on dry grass, spreading fast, burning deeper each time. Nkosana began visiting her more often, sneaking away from Amale with excuses and lies. The market no longer felt like a place of trade. It had become their secret world, hidden behind glances, low voices, and touches stolen between rows of spices and woven baskets. And each time, Zenziel spoke the same tempting words, her voice smooth as honey, but laced with poison. "She's fading," she whispered one afternoon, her fingers brushing his arm. "You've done well. Soon, you'll be free. We could go far from this dusty village. By the big river, maybe. Build a life with no secrets. No one to answer to." Her eyes sparkled when she said it, like she could already see their new life together. Land of their own. No rules. Just passion and freedom. She painted a picture so beautiful, so wild, it began to take root in Nkosana's heart. He started to believe it was real, that all of this suffering, all of Amale's slow pain, was just a step toward something better, toward the life he thought he deserved. Zenziel made him feel powerful, wanted. She didn't ask him to explain himself. She didn't care about right or wrong. Her only focus was him, and he fed on it. He began to think of her voice even when she wasn't around. It echoed in his mind like a chant. "If she dies, you're free," over and over again. He would hear it as he prepared Amale's tea, as he watched her cough softly into her hands, as he walked the village with a false smile on his face. And the more Amale weakened, the stronger Nkosana's obsession grew. He no longer saw her as a person, but a barrier, a wall standing between him and Zenziel's promises. Every time Amali thanked him for his help, it only made him colder. Every time she looked at him with love in her eyes, he felt anger creeping in. Why couldn't she just fade faster? Why was she still holding on? Zenziel added fuel to the fire with every meeting. She would laugh softly, run her fingers through his hair, and speak of lands far away, places where no one knew their names, where they could start fresh, live rich, love loudly. She promised to make him feel alive every day, to treat him like a king. But not with her around, she would say, her voice sharp. You're stuck in chains, Nkosana. You want more, don't you? You want me. He nodded every time. He stopped questioning it. He started thinking of Amale as already gone, already part of the past. The poison was working, slowly but surely, and he told himself he was smart, that he was in control. Gogo Lindiwe's warning, forgotten. His vows, meaningless now. All he saw was Zenziel, her smile, her words, her body, her promises. She had become his future. What Nkosana didn't see was the way darkness had begun wrapping around him, slowly stealing his soul. Each lie he told, each pinch of powder he added, each time he listened to Zenzili's whispers instead of the truth in his heart, it all led him deeper into a place he couldn't return from. But he didn't notice, not yet, because in his mind, he was winning. He believed he held all the strings, that he had fooled everyone. Amale, the village, even the spirits watching in silence. None of them could see what he had planned. He walked through Dombasi like a man with a secret no one could touch, smiling on the outside, rotting on the inside. And every night, as Amale lay in their bed, weaker than the day before, Nkosana would stare at the ceiling and picture himself beside Zenzile by that big river she spoke of, laughing, free. But fate, as always, had its own story to tell. The morning sun had barely risen when a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the village path, wrapped in layers of bold-coloured cloth, a strong wooden walking stick in hand, and eyes that missed nothing. Mama Nomvula had returned. Her arrival was unexpected, unannounced, but no one was surprised. That was her way, moving when the spirits whispered, speaking when others stayed silent. Nkosana froze when he saw her outside the door, calling his name in her strong, commanding voice. He forced a smile and rushed to greet her, hugging her with stiff arms. "Mama, you didn't tell me you were coming. I don't need to tell you when my bones say it's time," she replied, her eyes narrowing slightly as she looked past his shoulder into the house. "Where is my daughter?" He hesitated a second too long. "Amale, she's just resting. She's been tired lately." Mama Nomvula didn't say anything. She simply walked past him and entered the house like it still belonged to her, which, in some ways, it did. She found Amal lying on a mat, wrapped in a thin blanket, her face pale, her body looking smaller than she remembered. Amala struggled to sit up when she saw her mother-in-law and gave a weak smile. "Mama Nomvula, you've come," she said softly. The older woman sat beside her and held her hand, noticing right away the chill in her fingers. She didn't speak of it, not yet. She simply helped her up, brought her water, and asked questions about her meals, her sleep, her energy. Amale answered them all with that same soft voice, never once complaining. But Mama Nomvula saw it. She saw the quiet pain in her eyes, the way her breath trembled, the way her smile faded too quickly. That night, over dinner, Mama Nomvula watched Nkosana closely. He laughed too loud. He moved too fast. He served tea for Amale with too much care. And when he thought no one was watching, his eyes darted to the clay jar he kept hidden near the firewood. She noticed. "Is she seeing a healer?" she asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Nkosana paused. "She doesn't need one. She's just tired. The season has been rough on her." "Tired women don't lose their colour," Mama Nomvula said. "Tired women don't cough like their chest is full of stones." He tried to laugh it off, to change the subject, but she said nothing more that night. She only watched. Every move, every word, every cup of tea. For the next few days, she stayed. She woke early, helped Amale bathe, sat with her during the quiet hours. And all the while, she kept her eyes on her son. She knew him better than he knew himself. She had raised him, taught him how to lie, and how to get caught. Something was wrong here, something deep. And though Nkosana thought he was clever, his mother's spirit had seen darker things in her life. She didn't accuse, she didn't shout, she simply waited, because the truth, like smoke, always finds its way out of the cracks. Nkosana started to feel it, that tightness in his chest every time she looked at him for too long, that fear creeping up when she stepped too close to the teapot. He tried to act normal, but Mama Nomvula's presence was heavy, like a storm that hadn't yet broken, and deep inside, he began to wonder, how much did she already know? And how long before she acted? He had planned everything so carefully, but he had forgotten one thing. You can hide your sins from the village, but not from your mother. The morning came with a quiet heaviness in the air. The sky outside was overcast, and even the birds seemed to sing more softly than usual. Inside the house, Amale lay curled up, too weak to rise. Her breath came in slow, shallow waves. Nkosana stood over her for a moment, watching her chest rise and fall. She didn't even notice him. Her eyes barely opened. He said nothing, just turned away and walked to the kitchen. He moved quickly now, no hesitation, no guilt left in his hand. The small clay jar waited for him near the corner, tucked behind a basket. He took it out, opened it with steady fingers, and pinched the same deadly amount of powder. It had become routine. He poured hot water into the wooden cup, stirred slowly, and watched the poison dissolve into nothingness. There was no smell, no color, no sign of the danger within, just like always. As he reached for the cup, he heard footsteps behind him, firm and slow. Mama Nomvula entered the kitchen, her walking stick tapping the floor with each step. She looked at her son, then at the cup in his hand. "You never made tea for me since you were a child," she said with a small, proud smile. "Look at you now, a man, making tea." Nkosana's heart skipped. His fingers clenched the cup tightly. He opened his mouth to speak, to stop her, but his voice failed. She stepped forward and gently took the cup from his hands before he could say a word. "I'll drink this one," she said, lifting the cup toward her lips. "To the health of this house." He wanted to scream, to grab it back, but his body froze. He just stood there, watching as she took the first sip, eyes closed, humming in approval. "Still too strong," she chuckled, "just like when you were 10. Nkosana's throat went dry. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Every second stretched longer. She sat down on the stool near the fire and took another sip, still smiling. He sat opposite her, pretending to be calm, but inside, a storm had begun. The poison, it was in her now. His mother, not Amale. His plan, so perfect and careful, had turned on him in an instant, and there was no going back, no way to fix it, no excuse he could give. Mama Nomvula kept speaking, asking about the village, about the harvest, about old memories, but her voice started to slow. Her eyes blinked harder. Her hands began to tremble slightly. She touched her chest once, then again. Nkosana stared at her, numb. His heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear her voice. She looked at him then, her smile fading slowly, confusion creeping across her face. What did you put in the tea?" He said nothing. She stared at him harder now, eyes sharp, filled with questions. And then, something shifted. She understood. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out, just silence. Nkosana felt his world crumbling. The very person who once protected him, guided him, stood by him, was now the victim of his own evil. The poison meant for a gentle, trusting wife had entered the veins of his own blood, and for the first time in weeks, fear truly took over. Not fear of being caught, but fear of what he had become. Hours passed slowly after that morning. Nkosana sat still, his mind racing, but his body frozen. Mama Nomvula had returned to her mat after finishing the tea, saying she felt tired. She thought it was just the long journey, or maybe her age catching up, but Nkosana knew better. And when she finally lay down to rest, something inside him cracked. By mid-afternoon, she was groaning in her sleep, her face pale, sweat glistening on her forehead. Her breathing became heavy. Then, her body started to shake. Amala, weak and struggling herself, crawled toward her mother-in-law with trembling hands. "Mama! Mama, what's wrong?" Mama Nomvula didn't respond, just groaned again, louder this time. Amala screamed for help. Her voice was soft but filled with fear. Neighbors heard her cry and rushed to the house. Soon, a crowd gathered outside. The calm of the village shattered. "What happened to her?" someone asked. "She was fine this morning. She drank tea with Nkosana, Amale whispered, confused and crying. The name Nkosana fell into the silence like a stone in still water. Everyone turned to look at him. He stood in the corner, silent, wide-eyed, hands clenched. Then an elder woman whispered, "Call Gogo Lindiwe, now." Moments later, the village herbalist arrived, dressed in her layers of beads and herbs, her eyes sharp as ever. She entered the hut without a word, moved straight to the mat where Mama Nomvula lay, and knelt beside her. She looked into her eyes, felt her pulse, and then she smelled her breath. "Bring me the tea," she said firmly. Amala, too weak to stand, pointed toward the kitchen. One of the villagers brought the remaining tea from the morning, still warm in the cup. Gogolindiwe sniffed it once, twice. Then her eyes narrowed. She turned to Nkosana, her voice calm but cold. "You made this." He didn't answer. Gogo stood slowly. The crowd held their breath. "This tea carries the scent of Umuthi Wekufa, death powder. It does not belong in a home, but in the earth, far from people. Who brought this poison here?" No one spoke. She stepped closer to Nkosana, her voice louder now. "Tell the truth, before the spirits punish what's hidden." The pressure in the room broke him. Nkosana's knees buckled. He dropped to the ground, gasping for air. The truth was choking him. He tried to speak, but no words came. His face twisted with shame and fear. Amale stared at him, her eyes wide with betrayal. "You," she whispered, "you poisoned her?" Still no words, just tears. Gogo Lindiwe shook her head. "The ancestors saw what you did. You tried to take life with your own hands, but life doesn't belong to you." The crowd was silent. Some stepped back from Nkosana, as if the darkness around him could spread. Others began to cry. Mama Nomvula groaned again, weaker now. Amale crawled to her, holding her hand, sobbing. "Please don't leave us," she whispered. Nkosana stared at the floor, unable to move, trapped in the cage he built with his own hands. He thought he was clever, thought he could control everything, but in the end, he couldn't even protect the one person who had always loved him. The poison meant for betrayal had become the proof of his crime, and now the entire village knew. Nkosana sat on the floor of the gathering hut, surrounded by the heavy silence of his people. The sky outside had turned orange with the setting sun, but no one moved. All eyes were on him. The shame clung to him like wet cloth. His lips trembled as he looked at Mama Nomvula, still unconscious, her breath shallow. Amali sat beside her, face streaked with tears, eyes empty. His hands shook as he finally spoke. "It was me. I gave her the tea." His voice was broken, barely louder than a whisper. "It was meant for Amali. I didn't want her anymore." Gasps echoed across the room, but he wasn't finished. His voice cracked as he continued. "I was with someone else. Zenziel. She said we could start again, if Amale was gone." The name sent another wave through the crowd. A few elders looked at each other. Others closed their eyes in grief. "You poisoned your wife," one elder said coldly. "For lust?" Nkosana nodded slowly. "Every morning, a little more." The words hung heavy in the air. No one defended him. No one dared. A messenger was sent to find Zenziel, but by the time they reached the market, she was already gone. Her stall abandoned, her house empty. Word spread fast. Zenziel had fled the village. By nightfall, the tribal council had gathered. The oldest and wisest sat in a circle, with the villagers forming an outer ring. Firelight flickered across their serious faces. Gogo Lindiwe stood among them, her arms crossed tightly. "This was not just a crime against a wife," she said. "It was a curse upon the spirit of trust. A man who poisons his own home invites darkness into all of us." Nkosana knelt in the center. He didn't plead. He didn't cry anymore. He just waited. The verdict came slowly. No jail, no beating, no quick end. "You will face Ubungoma's justice," the chief elder declared. "The punishment of the ancestors. You will live where no voices reach you, where no fire warms you. You will serve the spirits you disrespected, until they forgive you, if they ever do." A gasp moved through the crowd. Ubungoma's justice meant exile to the sacred forest, where no one lived, only spirits. There he would survive alone, forbidden to speak, forbidden to return, watched only by the whispers of the ancestors. As the villagers turned their backs, Nkosana was led away, the drums of justice echoing behind him. He had lost everything: his wife, his mother, his freedom, and all for a lie dressed in desire. The spirits had seen it all, and now they would be his only company. Amale survived, but everything inside her felt different. Her body slowly healed, but her heart remained heavy. The home felt cold without Mama Nomvula. The way she used to sit by the door, the way her voice filled the space, it was all gone. Every corner of the house reminded Amale of what was lost. The village came together to bury Mama Nomvula with great honor. People brought flowers, lit fires, and sang her name with love. She was remembered as a strong woman who gave everything to protect what mattered. Many believed the ancestors guided her that morning, that her spirit stepped in to take the pain meant for someone else. The wooden cup, the one used that day, was placed in the village shrine, not hidden, not broken, but displayed for all to see. A sign, a warning. Above it, the elders carved Mama Nomvula's face, strong, wise, watching. No one dared touch the cup. People would visit and stand in silence, looking through the glass, remembering what it meant. What happened didn't stay quiet. Words spread fast. People in nearby villages heard about the cup, about the poison, about what one man had done out of selfishness. People whispered about the woman who ran and the one who stayed and survived. It changed the way people acted. Men thought twice before lying to the ones who loved them. Women trusted their instincts more. People paid closer attention to each other. And Amale, she didn't leave. She didn't try to erase what had happened. Instead, she stood tall. She helped others heal. She spoke with calm strength, helping young girls understand their worth. She showed them that quiet hearts could still hold fire. Time passed. The cup never moved. Faces changed. Seasons changed. But the memory stayed strong. People would still come to the shrine, stand before the glass, and remember. Because what happened inside that home was never just between two people. It became something that lived in the air, in the ground, in the way people held each other a little closer, in how they listened and how they loved. And the cup stayed right there, waiting, watching, reminding.